Suppose you are born into a world where physical power really is most important, and say you, ever since you were a child, have been the pinnacle of that power. Everyone around you, your family and friends, are only treating you the way they do because of your power. Power you were simply born with. You were the single most sought after or hated person in the entire world. This is the story of Gojo Satoru, and how he has felt since he came out of the womb and changed the balance of the world. Hidden Inventory is one of the best arcs in the series, and I feel the anime elevated it even further. There's so many reasons why it's so great, but here we're focusing on Gojo stepping into the role as the strongest. Before the Toji incident, it was always Geto and Gojo. Gojo from birth has been put on this insane pedestal from being the first in a millennia to have both the Six Eyes and the Limitless technique. Within his own family, he was the pinnacle above everyone else in physical prowess, and whether he liked it or not, he was treated as such. But then he went to Jujutsu High and met Suguru Geto, someone with a similarly powerful technique and prowess for Jujutsu. From then on, they were a package deal. Maybe they only became so close because of their abilities, because they could understand each other as being separate from others, above them. Or maybe just because they had a genuine connection, but either way, they were good friends. After Toji came on through, that changed. Gojo awakened, and he became leaps and bounds above Geto, said by himself, and he was once again alone. This freak of nature, Toji Fushiguro, who we now know is in the top of the verse in terms of power, was taken out with ease by this awakened Gojo. Really, how could anyone compare? And with this power came a loneliness. A loneliness Gojo has always felt, but now he could never escape from. His ability literally makes him untouchable, and in return makes it so he cannot touch anyone else. After being awakened, this has become an automatic thing for him, solidifying this loneliness. It's fitting how at the same time, Geto is spiraling, and although, Gojo does notice Geto's getting thinner and not sleeping, he doesn't truly see what's happening in front of him despite his Six Eyes, like at all. And this is his best friend, to the point that he cannot believe at all that Geto killed that village and goes to confront him. It's been said if somebody was just paying attention to Geto, this could have been avoided, but that's just not possible for Gojo, the only person close enough to Geto to try. This is where we see my favorite line in the entire series regarding Gojo's character.
君は五条悟だから最強なのか、最強だから五条悟なのか。
When we get to Gojo as an adult, he is truly a pillar for the Jujutsu world. So much so, he states himself he could kill all of the higher-ups that run the society alone. He is among a big group of big-deal teacher-type characters, and he has a fair relationship with them, but there's an air amongst this dynamic. It's like you go to a small university, and all your teachers are normal professors, and then there's just Albert Einstein, casually amongst the faculty. A weird dynamic for that staff, I am sure. Moving on, we see Gojo here as a person. He's fun, he's kind of annoying, and overall just has that hot shit playful attitude. He is a very complex and loving person, but he cares about these kids and this world. To Gojo, Jujutsu is his world. It is all he has ever known since he popped out of the womb, and he wants these kids to have each other and to surpass him so they never feel the solitude he does. He even goes on to say how these kids won't be restricted to special grade and they'll far surpass him and all that. This is where we get Gojo the strongest being such a fun and interesting character as a concept. Our main character, Yuji Itadori, is very physically strong, like way stronger than any normal person. But coming into the jujitsu world, he's pretty low on the food chain, getting his ass whooped by special grade in the first 10 chapters. And that is what's so wild with Gojo as the teacher. Because of course the teacher character should be strong, but it is insane the difference in the two. He takes down a curse far beyond this special grade with such ease and finesse, to the point when Yuji asks if he could beat the main villain at full power in the first few chapters, he's very casual in his, yeah, I'd win. How could this young man with no curse technique reach or even surpass Gojo? Let alone, who is the villain that could pose a problem for anyone anytime soon with Gojo here? Where's the tension in the story then? So, for the first few arcs, all of the stakes come from Gojo just not being around, or the villains having to work around Gojo. No. From the author himself having to work around Gojo. The beauty of this character is that the author, Akutami, literally has to write around his own character because he far surpassed what he thought he would be capable of. Now, I want to compare Gojo to Saitama real quick. This series is obviously much more of a gag/comedy compared to JJK, so it works as a plot tool much easier. He comes in and handles the issue no problem, but still, despite that, one's wonderful writing makes it so there is still great tension and stakes in every single arc while Saitama is on his way. But he gets the excuse of making Saitama late for dumb reasons, like a coupon sale. Or more so early on, but still. This is simply born from the difference in tones of the series. So how can Akutami get around this? Well, he can't, really. Honestly, in all of the early arcs, Gojo is either literally there to handle it, or it's a smaller scale issue, like a standalone mission, that he just isn't needing to be there in-universe. Akutami works with this greatly to start, but as the series gets bigger, how is he just going to keep Gojo out to get these stakes up? Well, this is where we get to Shibuya. The beautiful thing about this is that Gojo does handle it, like you expect him to. The entire start of this arc is just proof that Gojo can and will end this very quickly. So much so that the entire cast is just there on standby. Again, showing the pressure he holds as the strongest in universe, and to us, as again, he almost ended this whole thing. So how do we get this great, long tug-of-war of an arc? Because Akutami gets rid of him indefinitely. I don't need to explain the beauty of this moment between this pseudo-Geto and Gojo. It speaks for itself. He has just a moment of weakness, a reminder of his past when he wasn't alone, and it costs him. He's gone, sealed away. The one time Gojo opened himself up, it led to his downfall. He truly can never catch a break, but it doesn't get him too down, as he has full faith in his students, who he's carefully trained so they can save the day. His carefree attitude holds strong as he knows they'll get him out. And for the entire rest of the series where he is in the box, you can feel his absence, both in the fictional world itself and on the pages of the manga. And that's what makes such a great character. The stakes for the entire Culling Games arc are at an all-time high because he's gone. But that's getting into manga spoilers, so let's get into that. Like I said, the manga portion where Gojo is gone is fantastic because you notice his presence, or lack thereof, but there's not really a lot to talk about with Gojo because he is not here. So let's skip ahead. Gojo's triumphant return works really, really well, for me at least. The instant power he puts on display, pulling up to Kenjaku and Sukuna, and he calls the shots of the situation about waiting until Christmas. It's just perfect. I really don't know if I've been so moved by a character's return like I was here. After some time skippage, we get the build-up of the generational showdown of Gojo versus Sukuna. And this moment right before stands out so much to me. Throughout the whole fight, up and down, this is what I kept going back to. when Gojo's in the zone and ready to leave, and Yuji comes in, and his presence alone completely changes the tone, and Gojo drops his infinity, which we know doubles as a metaphor for his solitude, and Yuji slaps him on the back. Gojo, despite it all, does love these kids, and they love him. The ensuing fight is one of the greatest in the series, if not the top one. In this fight, Gojo shows off his incredible prowess as a fighter, his ability to adapt and think quickly on his feet, and his pure explosive power, something we've never really gotten from him in full, just some glimpses of it in the past. But the most important part for Gojo's character is the end. I know some people have issues with this, but for me, this is a perfect end to Gojo. Honestly, this final chapter of the fight is in my top 5 for the whole series, up there in my chapters of all time. It's so perfect for Gojo and Sukuna. I've seen some discourse questioning why Gojo doesn't really mention his kids besides Megami in this airport. And I want to say, yes, he cares a lot about his kids and the future, but I think he trusts them more than that. And I think that's been shown time and time again. And I think Akutami skipped the month of training for a reason, as I'm sure we'll go back to it. And I'm also very sure Gojo accounted for the possibility of him losing. But really above all of that, this scene is about him, being around those that have also fallen in the past. A great showing of it too, of everyone being as they were in their high school days, the time in Gojo's life he remembers most fondly. Nanami then goes on to say how Gojo only cares for himself. Him saying this is probably partly true when it comes to jujitsu. Just look at Shibuya. Yes, Gojo cares about people, especially his kids. But he also can disconnect himself from others because of his physical loneliness. But let's not get this confused. The only thing separating this feral man from these villains, these powerhouse murderers, is his good heart, his compassion. And that is not denied by Nanami's words here. The fact that Gojo is a little selfish does not mean that he doesn't want to change the jujitsu world. It just means to him, jujitsu has always been for him, because that's all he himself has ever had. It does not mean he doesn't care about his students when he's fighting. It just means to him, jujitsu is everything he's ever known. It's a part of expressing himself. It's him. And this goes back to this identity crisis with Gojo. How is he Gojo because he's the strongest, or is he the strongest because he's Gojo? This idea of him, I think these words stick with Gojo so much that the entire series, not because it was some new idea to him, not because he never thought of it, but I think because it has always been such an intrinsic part of himself. Has he ever truly disconnected himself with jujitsu? And I think when Geto says this to him, it's a reminder. It's a reminder from the closest person he's ever known. It's a reminder that he doesn't know, that he cannot separate himself from his abilities, from his talents. I said it myself. He is a fantastic character that is elevated and based on his position as the strongest, but that is not everything about him. He himself could just never separate the two. Gojo and the strongest. Until Sukuna, with his own power, took him down and destroyed that pillar. And in his final moments, told him he'd always remember his name. And Gojo smiled. That little selfish part of him, that part of him that only knows jujitsu, that only wants to express himself with jujitsu, it was satisfied because it could let go. As well as that compassionate part that just wants to raise his kids, that wants to teach them. Because now I think he knows that they don't love him because he's the strongest, but because he's their teacher. Because he does so right by them. And unlike what Yaga told him in the past, Gojo went out with no regrets. He went out surrounded by others, those of his past, just like Yuji was told to do. And unlike what Gojo himself told Megami would happen, proving himself wrong. A perfect end for a near perfect, complex character. At the end of it all, Gojo, the one who ascended beyond this world, wasn't enough to take down Sukuna. Yeah, there's a possibility Gojo returns, I guess. I'm not counting on it. If it does happen, I'm not going to be upset. I love him. I love the character. But I think if he does come back, he absolutely will come back without his powers. Because that's the only way it would work for his character conclusion. And that is exactly where the question comes of who's going to beat Sukuna. You know, Gojo, the one who ascended above all, couldn't beat him. Who can? Well, I think Yuji will. Not achieving nirvana and throwing the pain away and all the world away, but accepting it. Accepting the pain, the world, body, mind, and soul, and being in it. I don't really want to get into it. This is my personal theory. Maybe I'll make a video at it. Who knows? See, Gojo wasn't selfish. He didn't do this to save others. He wants to save others, I'm sure, when they're in danger. He didn't just throw all these lives away in Shibuya and stuff. But that's not why he does it. But Yuji does. And I think once he realizes his place in this is not just as a cog, but he's a part, a important part of this vast world, and he accepts that he will do this without discrimination. He will save without discrimination. That's when he will reach the pinnacle of Jujutsu and take down Sukuna. Because I know we can all agree, the Yuji versus Sukuna get back is going to be one for the history books.